On this week's edition of the Rift Rewind, 100 Thieves upset Cloud9 to hand the reigning LCS Spring Split champions their first loss of the summer. Could this loss be good for C9? Then, how far is the gap between the LCS and NA Academy? Could a top Academy team compete in the LCS this split? Topics and more as the Rift Rewind starts now. Good vibes, positive thoughts, and acts of kindness, everybody. Welcome to the ESPN Esports League of Legends show, the Rift Rewind. Arda, Emily, Jacob, Tyler with you. And for the next 90 minutes, we are going to break down everything that has happened in League of Legends in the past week and look forward to the next week of League of Legends action, news, and notes. Programming note for you, if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget you can watch us on Twitch, the ESPN app, Twitter, and on YouTube. Immediately after this show at 8 p.m. Eastern, we play trivia. League of Legends trivia, and you can play along. You have to be here on Twitch in order to do so. There is an extension that you download. You set it up with your account, and then you challenge our esteemed panel of 3 to see if you know more about League of Legends than they do. Spoiler alert, you don't. But try anyway.
I don't know.
I love that vote of confidence. That sounded really confident.
I always have so much confidence in myself. And by that, I mean I just didn't.
I didn't know you were doing trivia tonight, so I don't know if I'm getting my full strength. So, you know, it's not going to be my best night. Just putting it out there right now.
Well, give us your best and worst, Tyler. Let's start there. What we're going to do with Love and Hate this week is we're actually going to give the floor to Tyler. We're going to rotate every week and choose one person to give what we loved and what we hated this past week in League of Legends. Tyler, tell us first, what did you love this past week?
I love the return of El Contracto himself. Juan Contractz Garcia is finally back. You know, there was some drama over, Medios going public on Twitter saying he was benched, and then should he have been benched? It was 100 Thieves screwing him over once again. Contractz who, kind of disappeared from the universe, going down to Academy where almost no one watches except Emily Rand and Kelsey Moser. So really, he was just kind of outside of everyone's mind. He was in the nether realm where very few people watch. So he is outside, out of mind. And people forget. And this weekend, he comes back, wins the weekly MVP of the LCS, and dominates Blabber. Blabber, the reigning MVP of the league, kind of the person who took everything Contractz was supposed to be. Because people forget that when Contractz came to the league 3 years ago on C9, he was that Blabber-style player. He was that next generational jungler, or hopefully the first real mechanically gifted generational jungler from North America. Or people want him to be that mechanical god who could go to the World Championship and, go against the best players they are and not fall down due to, lack of skill. And it looked like he was going to be that player. He came out hot on C9, and then it just seemingly everything just fell apart for him. He left the team unceremoniously. He went to, get a bigger contract on a different team. That didn't work out. He fell to the netherrealm known as Academy, and he kind of disappeared from everyone. And while Contractz fell, Blabber rose up the ranks, and Blabber took over that spot Contractz was supposed to fill. And now Blabber, he is that on the verge of being that world-class jungler, that generational talent that everyone's wanted from an NA jungler for so long. Mike Young, Contractz, now Blabber finally, kind of reaching that destiny. But Contractz, out of nowhere, coming back from the netherrealm, for people actually watching him for once, and he dumpsters Blabber and beating C9 for the first time all season long. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. I'm so happy to see Contractz back on the backstage because he had so much potential. He was supposed to be that player. And if we can have another player similar to Blabber, kind of taking his own different route where Blabber's kind of been a steady ascent up the rankings, where Contractz had this dip down to the netherrealm and now kind of finding his way back up. It's only good things if Contractz shows that he could be that consistent player and improve upon, because Contractz is still a young player. He can still become that all-star, superstar jungler that people want him to be from the very beginning. So welcome back, Contractz. I'm very excited to see him back on the stage.
It's funny to think about how young these players are, despite the longevity that they've had and the history that they've had in the LCS. Like, how old is Contractz versus how many years he's been active, or at least had a career in the LCS and Academy? It's just crazy to think sometimes with some of the players.
I had a chance to talk to him, and I know he also said this in an interview with Travis, but we reiterated it when I was talking to him this past weekend in a written piece that's going to come out later this week. But he did talk about like a loss of motivation that happened when he went to academy, and he was like, I'm like the entire time he kind of came at it from a mindset of like, I'm better than this. And it was only, I guess, until he was like humbled by his presence there that he was able to regain like some of his confidence and also a lot of his desire to play and grind and perform really well. Like he said, I wasn't playing solo queue. I was kind of lost. And it's his kind of like epiphany is really interesting, like listening to him talk through it, especially since I think one of the things he admitted that he struggled with when he left C9 was actually being like a really strong voice for a team. And if you're a jungler and you don't have kind of a really strong contributing voice, especially early, it's actually really difficult to be in that position and not be really vocal. And so he also like just talked me through like how his comms have evolved and how he has evolved as a player. Obviously, the fact that they left the Olaf up is also a huge reason, a contributing factor in that victory over C9. But I agree, it's really great to see Contractz kind of come out the other side, and he seems like a much more well-rounded, like calm, like more, I don't know, he has a lot more self-awareness and self-confidence now, I think. Especially speaking as someone, like I was, I think, one of his second ever interviews, and he was so like shy and quiet, and to see that kind of transformation that he's had over the past few years. And in answer to your question, Arda, he's only 20. And he's been playing since Ember days, back in, like, he was signed to Ember late 2015, if you're looking at, like, previously he was on Noble Truth and Zenith, but Ember is probably the real team before he went over to C9 Challenger. So yeah, that's like since he was what, approximately 16. Yeah.
It's just crazy, right? Like Tyler took at least 2 minutes to run down Contract's resume, and he's only 20 years old.
Yeah, he's about 6 months older than Blabber, which is like he's only 6 months older than Blabber. So
unbelievable.
Like, Contractz still has so much room to grow, which is the exciting thing, right? Where if he could find that consistency, he can find that voice and be that, jungler that we've all wanted him to be. He's a very special talent. And, I welcome all talent that we can actually see these burgeoning, like, NA talent. We have Blabber, we have Vulcan, now Contractz possibly, Tactical, Johnson. It's an exciting time. I don't want to get over optimistic, but it's exciting to see homegrown talent actually prove itself.
Speaking of needing to prove yourself, Tyler, what did you hate this past
week? Oh,
man.
This hurts my heart. Poor Hanwha.
Yeah, so Emily kind of spoiled it, but
sorry.
No. It's it's not. Nothing can really spoil the trash heap that is Hanwha Life, which is really sad. And it's not just it's not that they're winless and they're toothless and they don't know where their roster really should be outside the bottom lane of Lehens and Viper, who last year were on Griffin, up in the penthouse, partying with the bubbly. They were the golden children of South Korean esports. Now they're down in the dumpsters, fighting for a single win. And it's not just Hanwha's bad. We've had a lot of bad teams in the LCK. We've had Jin Air, F in chat for Jin Air. They're still fighting down there in Challenger. Hopefully they can get a franchise spot in 2021 and rise from the ashes. We've had...
Is there a Green Wings emote?
There should be. There are a lot of Western Jin Air Green Wings fans.
Yeah. We've had Jin Air Green Wings. We've had, Kongdu Monster. We've had all these really bad teams. But the thing about Hanwha is that they have so much money. And I don't think people realize how nice they... Like the players in Korea kind of want to go to Hanwha because their infrastructure is so great. If you've watched T1's Wolf series, where Wolf goes around eating food at everyone's team house, which is probably the best, team content right now out there, is just Wolf going around to team houses, eating their food and rating it. Great idea, T1. Great idea. Wolf's amazing. And in the Hanwha episode, it's like he's going to a castle. Like, it is pristine. Great food. Great support. Hanwha gives a lot of resources to their players. So it's not like this is a team that is a bottom feeder with no money and they're just getting beaten down because they're not giving out big contracts. I reported at the tail end of the offseason that Lehen's got a contract over 700,000 American. So Lehen's got his bag, and I would say deservedly so. He was one of the best support players at Worlds last year. He got the bag. He now has Viper, his brother for life, back in the bottom lane, but they don't know what to do on the other side of the map. They gave Cuvée a contract, and I know, Emily, you love Cuvée. He's one of your favorite players of all time, but Cuvée is a shell of him for herself. He's doing his best sword impression up in the top lane. They don't know. They have no real rhyme or reason for how they throw in their mid laners and junglers. Their top side is complete and utter garbage, and it doesn't matter how much money Hanwha Life throws at it, how pretty their team house is, how glorious the food is. At the end of the day, their team is just trash, and it's sad to say. And I do think they're going to get a franchise spot because they do have a lot of money, and they do treat their players really well. Mm-hmm. But the roster is it's really sad. It's really disheartening.
It's also just really frustrating because these players, like not only to your point did they come from other teams where they were really successful, but they all are like, this isn't like Jin Air having a budget roster and kind of bringing up players who are just coming out of Challenger or like maybe struggled on other teams. Like, no, like Cuvée is a world champion. The thing about Cuvée is that he has a really specific champion pool, right? And so if that champion pool is not meta, like I'll agree, despite the fact that I defend Cuvée a lot, he's not playing well right now. And also that's always been the champion pool thing, is always stuck with him. But then you have like Viper and Lehen's, which is like a really creative bot lane. They've played together before. It's not like they lack synergy. I don't think Hadu's not performing well right now, but he's not a bad, like super bad jungler. Lava, previously they knew how to use him because he had, again, kind of a weird champ pool, especially when he swapped from support. But like, so it's not like these players are really like terrible, right? If I'm looking down like what I think their starting lineup should be, but and to on top of it to have Nofe as their coach is just like really bizarre to me, because previously when I praised Hanwha in past iterations of this team, they always really knew how to draft well around the players that they had, even if they had really funky champion pools. And we're not seeing that. We're just seeing, like you said, a mess. And it's really sad. And now Hanwha fans have nothing because their baseball team is also terrible.
Sad days.
Sad days. F in the chat for Hanwha not going.
But their food is good. Wolf did give their food a very high rating, so Hanwha has something to put their hat on. They are one of the best cooking teams in the LCK.
If there's one thing to be proud of, it's that at least you have something to hang your hat on, like you said. For those in the chat that are asking whether this is only an LCS show, the answer is no. First of all, thank you for finding the show. Appreciate you being here. We will be talking about the LEC later on, including Jack Troll to replace Destiny on Origin and G2 signing their current roster through 2022. That's going to come up later on in the show. Right now, let's talk about 100 Thieves. We talked a little bit about them, Tyler, in what you loved this past week. They had a terrific week with this new roster. They have won 3 of their last 4, including the last 2 games. Very impressive victories over FlyQuest and taking that undefeated streak away from Cloud9. Let's begin here. I had a chance to speak with Cloud9 top laner Licorice this past weekend, immediately after the loss, actually, and I just asked him about the 100 Thieves loss, why he thinks they lost against 100 Thieves, also analyzing them as a team, and the idea that maybe this is a good thing for the team because they don't have to worry about 18-0 and that monkey's off their back now. Have a look. Cloud9 just shockingly earned their first loss of the summer split against 100 Thieves. Licorice, the conversation online right now is this is surprising given the team that you're playing against and in the manner that it happened. Just give us your thoughts from yourself and the team moments after this loss.
It was a really tough game for us to play. I think like basically what happened is we just didn't play as a team. And when we're like as a team, we always set the pace of the game. So I think like if we are going to lose, it's going to be like an explosive game with fighting everywhere because that's just how we play. And I don't know, we just didn't play like as a unit today.
Did you feel, take me after the draft, even, stepping onto the Rift for the first time, did you feel after the draft that there might have been a slight disadvantage there? I know particularly in jungle there might have been a concern, but what was your vantage point?
at the time coming out, I thought the draft was fine. Like top lane is slightly favored for the Jace side, I think. I mean, it's a bit different when he takes Kaveh, which is something I'm just not used to seeing. But like the top lane matchup's fine. The Jarvan is really good at killing the Ashe Karma in the bot lane. That was kind of like our game plan, like play around the Wukong Senna, kill the Ashe Karma. So like coming out of Champ Select, I really thought that our draft was fine, but like they just had a lot of tools that they drafted and they were able to execute on their game plan really well.
I know that this similar situation happened last split with Cloud9 as well, right? Went on this long streak. People were talking 18-0, and then you lose to TSM in the spring. Now you lose to 100 Thieves, right? Does that take the weight off your shoulders a little bit? Just the idea that you don't have to worry about 18-0 and everybody talking about it now. Do you feel like you can exhale now a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I talked about this a lot last split when it was like the first time we were going and we were like super dominant, like you said. And I was always talking about how going 18-0 like isn't actually a good goal for an organization. Like you just want to keep getting better. You want to be learning from your matches and you want to do really well in playoffs. And that's all that matters. Like if you win 10 regular season games or you win 8 and you squeak into playoffs, if you're the best team in playoffs, that's all that matters.
So the full interview with Calgary, Alberta, Canada native Licorice is available at .com/ESPN. Of course, I'm going to have to give that plug.
I know,
ESPN
you
Esports.
Canada players.
Any opportunity I can. That's right. I'm actually the exclusive League of Legends Canadian interviewer. That's basically like every Canadian player. I will happily interview, Jacob, as you know. So let's talk about this loss. Licorice seems to be happy in a way that this happened because now people will stop talking about it. People will stop saying it. And now C9 can simply focus on being the best team in the LCS, which we all knew that they were.
Yeah, I think that there's two things here, right? So the first is the one that you sort of alluded to and he talked about in that interview, which is a relief. I think that there's a ton of pressure to be this undefeated team. They weren't that in the spring. I'm sure like they're definitely in the discussion for potentially the best team of all time in North America, right? And you know, when we talk 18-0, like that's a ton of pressure on these guys. And let us not forget, on the note of what we were talking about Contractz and Blabber earlier, like most of these guys are fairly young and they've only been doing this. They've only been playing at the LCS level for 3 years or less, right? In almost all cases between Licorice, Niski played very little more than that long ago, but like Licorice, Vulcan, and Blabber have only been doing this for 3 years or less each. So like this is a team that's full of really talented and high-performing players, certainly, but also really young players. So the fact that like having that sort of like breathing down your neck from fans is really intense. The other part of this that we've said on this show, and I don't think it can be overstated, is the fact that they need the competition, right? They didn't get the normal benefit of MSI that you would get if you were a regular team in a non-COVID-19 world, right? And so, like, every loss you can get while still being the best team in the league is valuable in some sort of way, right? Like, there's probably a discussion that they are having now in VOD review about what did we do wrong in this game? What sort of, like, weaknesses have we identified, and how can we shore those up? Those discussions need to be had. Obviously, we reported last week that that Riot is trying to do some sort of world's bubble-esque thing in China at the moment. Obviously, that's not set in stone. I want to be really clear that like this is an internal discussion, and I'm sure they'll figure out something. But hopefully, we get the World Championship, right? Like, there's still a small chance we don't get anything. But if we do get the World Championship, like Cloud9 needs as much practice as humanly possible against teams that are good. Unfortunately, not many of the teams in the LCS are very good. I do think some of them are improving over time. 100 Thieves is one of those now with some of these changes. But to me, like anytime C9 can take a loss and still be on top, like that's a good thing for them.
It's, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the sentiment here is that Cloud9, even if they had lost 2 in a row or 3 in a row, we would still consider them to be the best team in the LCS far and wide. But Licorice did say, Emily, in that interview, that even after one loss, and having seen what he has seen from 100 Thieves after the roster changes, he would consider 100 Thieves to be the second best team in NA, despite what Sven said. That's what he said. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think as much as we talked about, okay, how does this roster change make sense, right? Because I think people looked at the lineup, and we had people in chat saying something to this effect. I know they talked about it on Hotline League with Papa Smithy, where everyone was like, why didn't you take Ryoma out? He hasn't been performing as well. Like, try out Saligo, like, do that. Everyone was speculating about how these roster changes would work with the team, especially after Meteos, according to like everyone involved, put so much time and effort into like grinding himself, but also like trying to shepherd the team, I guess, or like lead the team, right? But this seems to be the right move for them because it's definitely been a breath of fresh air to this roster. I don't think they've looked perfect. I think they still really overly rely sometimes on Sunday's performance to kind of carry them, especially when they make mistakes. But if sometimes all you need is like a change, and it's going to be really hard for anyone outside of the team to see why that is the case. But I really like what they're doing because they're taking more risks and they look a little bit less hesitant. And I think in NA, you really need that if you want to be successful. Like, so there are so many teams that play really passively. This is a complaint I always have about them. Obviously, again, the Olaf pick really helped against C9 because Contractz is super comfortable on that champion, allows him to do so much early, even if I think people, whenever I say someone's aggressive early, it doesn't necessarily mean they're in lanes killing people. Like, he's basically destroying like jungle creeps, right? But he's building a lead and they're going off of that lead. And that's just, it's really important. So I like what I've seen from 100T actually. I don't know, I'm not playing them in scrim, so I don't know if they are up there now as like vying for second best in NA, but I think it's really interesting that Licorice would say that. And I don't think you can deny that this has kind of revitalized the team on stage.
Speaking of conversations, I also spoke with Tactical this past weekend, and Team Liquid is in the conversation of that second place team. I will end the 100 Thieves Cloud9 note on this, however. There is one thing that there's absolutely no doubt about, and that is that Quebec produces the best supports named Philippe. That is
there's two now.
Yeah, no, and there's Diamond, and Diamond is in Challenger or Academy, and he is definitely LCS worthy. Diamond, I think if Diamond was on a LCS team today, he'd be top 5 easily. Like, Diamond is a insane player, also from the French Canadian region. So you have
his name is David.
Yeah,
but not Philippe.
Not Philippe. But yeah, we have Poom, we have Vulcan, and we have Diamond. I think those three are the future of supports in NA. All three could be world-class players, and they all just happen to be French Canadian. So there's something going on in French Canada. So congratulations.
Something in the water that makes
something in the water to make really good supports out there.
Beautiful Quebec fresh water. Got to go try it sometime. Team Liquid, are they they're still in the conversation? They had a good weekend. They had another 2-0 week as we're going to take a look at the standings here in just a second. Team Liquid still in second place statistically with an 8-2 record. They have been doing fantastic. As poorly as Team Solo Mid have been performing recently, Team Liquid exactly the opposite. They have been having some great results. So tell me, Tyler, you look at these standings. What do you make of the second place race?
Every week, Yarda, every week it's choo, the tactical Team Liquid train, as I said on our preview show. What did I say? Yarda?
You said you're riding the tactical train to Group Stage Plaza. That's what
we're going to Group Stage Plaza. We're going straight to Group Stage Plaza. Then we're going to get knocked out by a better Chinese and European team. That is where we're going, Arda. I believe in Tactical. Tactical is going to end in top 3 in 80 carries, as I said, as I predicted. I am on in the Team Liquid train. I have been right on almost every prediction when it comes to Team Liquid. This team, as I thought, they're coming together slowly. I do, when it comes down to it, their experience in Broxa, Jensen, Core JJ, Impact really do strengthen the team. And Tactical has been a cold-blood killer. I would say he's a poor man's Sven from his first season on Origin. I go back a few years in 2016, I believe, or 2015 actually, where Origin Niels, when he went by that name, he was on a team of all these veteran players, and the thing that made Sven such a great rookie was that he was ice cold. He didn't get, tilted or pressured by the big moments. And I feel a very similar way of Tactical, where I don't think he's that level where Niels, when Sven came to the league, he was right up here. I think Tactical is more of like a 7 out of 10 if Sven was like a 9 or 10 out of 10. But he has shown that he is not getting rattled. And he has had so many big moments this season where the game is coming down to him. I know he's playing Aphelios, which is a pretty broken champion. So all you really have to do is close your eyes and smash the keyboard and you'll probably do something well. But he is not choking in these clutch moments as we've seen rookies in the past do. So I'm very happy with Team Liquid. I'm still on the bandwagon. We are going straight to Group Stage Plaza. We are not making it to quarterfinals paradise. But for right now, Group Stage Plaza looks nice.
So why is the train? Like, did we miss the train? Do we have insufficient funds to buy a ticket to get to playoff circle? Like, why are we missing the train here? We got to keep up with. We got to add to the story every week. We can't just say Group Stage Plaza, Tyler. We'll think of it, I guess.
We'll think of it, but my eyes are on Group Stage Plaza. This team, I think the good thing about Team Liquid, though, is that Team Liquid last year going into Worlds, all they could think about is making a semifinal or higher. They were a team that had to make top 4 or their season would have been deemed a failure. I think Team Liquid this year, making World Championship, I think they'd be happy with that. And if they make it to the World Championship, they're going to have no pressure on them. All the pressure on North America is going to be on Cloud9. Everyone in North America, the internationals, everyone's going to look at Cloud9. They're going to look at Cloud9 and say, this is the team that needs to perform in NA. And if C9 fails, they're going to get all the hate. TL, for the first time in so many years, can go to Worlds, kick back. And if they go 0-6, they'll get a little bit of hate, but they kind of have, they're kind of money to play with here. And I kind of like that. And I do think Tactical is improving very rapidly. And I'm excited for the future of this team.
The team that would definitely get flamed a lot more if they went 0-6 and have a lot of pressure, and you might even look at and say they may not even make Worlds at this point given some recent performances, are those 3 letters, TSM. Jacob, tell me something. Tell me about TSM right now. How do they lose to Immortals this week? What is going on with this team? What are the challenges that you are noticing here?
Seems bad. Like I don't know what to say, right?
Wow.
I don't think they're bad. They're not amazing, but I don't think they're bad.
So
expand.
Okay, so to the credit, I think Immortals is getting better now under new management and with a different coaching structure. So it's not like this is if they would have lost to Immortals 2 weeks ago, I would have been like ringing the red alarm altogether. But like, I've just been so underwhelmed by the consistent performance from TSM lately. I want to talk about this a little bit later because I know we have some academy stuff on the docket, but like, they do have some academy players that are particularly interesting, especially when I look at Treats that I think that I've heard a little bit about people wanting to bring him in. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know at this point. But yeah, like TSM just looks so disjointed. And a lot of people are going to point at Spica and just be like, he's garbage. And he's not. Like, he's not great. He's not. Like, he's not as good as Contractz. He's not as good as Blabber, right? He's not as good as Vinskare, and I could go on. But he's actually not awful. And he's going to get scapegoated a lot because this team has Bjergsen on it. It has Double Lift on it. It's going to be the same way it was in the spring with Broken Blade and last year with Broken Blade. Everybody was like, they should get rid of Broken Blade in the offseason. He's not necessarily the problem either, right? Like, it's just collectively as a team, they look really off. I've been unimpressed by the bot lane performance, to say the least. Both of them, to be honest, Double Lift and Biofrost. I don't know if I'd pin it on one in particular, but I certainly would say that, like, for me, if I were going to make a change, it would be trying out Treats because you have an import slot open. Why don't you just go ahead and give it a shot? Like, there's what possibly could go wrong at this point, right? Like, you are on a 6-loss streak, so throw him in. Like, he's doing well in Academy. But yeah, like the stats that we have on screen right now, like obviously point to everyone except Bjergsen and Double Lift because they're the carries. But like, I think this team collectively should take some blame here. And I've been very unimpressed by this team. I thought this team would be a lot better. I thought they would make the World Championship. I'm having some serious doubts here midway through the split.
I don't think they're terrible. I actually think Broken Blade's been one of their worst performing players. I think Spica might be their second best player, and that's not saying a lot because it has reverted back to the Bjergsen 4 wards meta that was so popular a few years ago on TSM and year and after year and after year. And Bjergsen really has kind of reverted back to that that great Bjergsen form, that MVP Bjergsen, the 4-time MVP, which is great for TSM, but everything around him hasn't been up to snuff. So I don't think TSM is terrible. I don't want to throw in the towel just yet. NA is too spastic outside of C9 where I can really say who's going to Worlds outside of C9 and 2 other teams. I'm not going to cancel TSM yet. TSM is still out there. I'm not crossing them out yet. We can cross out a few teams in NA that they're not going to Worlds. For TSM, I still have a little bit of hope, a little bit of optimism. NA is too weak where I can't just say TSM can't make it out.
The thing with TSM, the thing with TSM that worries me the most, I think, is that a lot of it is still some signature stuff that we've seen, like in their early and mid game, especially, that we've seen, like, regardless of who their jungler is. And I'm saying that because, again, to the point, I know that Spica is going to get scapegoated a lot. But I also think, to Tyler's point, like, we're looking at the next group of teams, right? FlyQuest, who have looked really shaky, is tied for 4th. And then we have CLG and EG, which their game was like galaxy brain level of play this past week when they met each other. So it's like, okay, TSM, even if they stay at this level and they show a lot of similar things in how they approach the mid game that they've had for years, they still should like make playoffs. They still will have a chance to go to Worlds. I think the disappointing thing about this roster is that like there's that idea that it could be more, right? That's the main issue. It's like if you're looking at this lineup and what they did in the off season, 6-4 mid-season or just past mid-season is not where they want to be.
And they took the biggest mid-season swing, right? Like Kave also a little bit got a little bit scapegoated too. Like, do I think he had a good spring? No. Do I think that he was the worst player on TSM in the spring? No. Do I think that he could have improved in the summer? Probably. Instead, they took the big swing on Double Lift and all the drama that happened around that, right? Which puts them in a much more like position of scrutiny if they do not do well, because people are going to cry nepotism and all the other things we talked about among ourselves. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like they took the biggest mid-season swing. It was super public. It was costly. It was not cheap to get him away from Liquid, get Double Lift away from Liquid. And like to have this result that is incredibly underwhelming for as many swings as they've taken. And like, let's not forget that like they paid Bjergsen very, very nicely this past offseason also. But that was before free agency night. They did that extension like right at the tail end of Worlds. And so I think people may forget that it happened. But like, yeah, like TSM's spending a lot of money on this League of Legends team being competitive, and there are not very good results with that happening. So I don't know. I've been very unimpressed relative to the cost that went into it, and the cost compared to some of the other teams that like are developing talent that I believe a little bit more in across the league.
So TSM will be playing FlyQuest and 100 Thieves this week, and I think this is going to be a very telling week for TSM with those two teams. You have a struggling FlyQuest still in the mix, but more importantly, in my opinion, you have a surging 100 Thieves with roster changes and a new outlook. So let's see how that match unfolds. I think that's going to be a very telling one. Before we move off of this, is it safe to say that Rogue is better than TSM now?
Yes. Rogue is waiting in the lunchroom.
Definitely.
I mean, if
I just want to be clear.
If Rogue makes Worlds, TSM should just throw to not make Worlds. If they see Rogue qualified, they should just be like, we're not going. Because if TSM goes to Worlds and then gets smashed by Rogue, they will never hear the end of it. And right now, it's no question that Rogue is the better team. And coming up in this next weekend, we have 100 Thieves of Sunday. And and they're finally playing around Sunday. Sunday is just like, he's rubbing his hand together, looking at Broken Blade, getting smashed game after game. And it's gonna be a very difficult week for TSM. It's gonna be a very difficult week. I could see them going 0-2, but as I see them going 0-2, they're definitely gonna go 2-0. So congratulations TSM on going 2-0 before failing the week after.
Let's talk about this is gonna lead into our main topic this week, essentially. The idea of LCS and NA Academy. And this has been a hot topic, especially given what we've seen. Poom being an example with 100 Thieves, Immortal, Alorum, etc. Other changes that have been made tactical, even if you go far back to Spring Split, him making his debut there in bot lane. But Emily had a chance to catch up with Insanity this past weekend. That interview, is it available right now? Has the full interview been posted?
Yeah.
It has
Yes.
been posted at youtube.com/ESPN Esports, but here is a clip right now.
You get into Academy, you do really well in Academy, but then mid lane is a position that typically North American sides will prefer to bring in a player from another region rather than promote their own mid laners.
Mm-hmm.
How does that, like, obviously you are one person, so you're not going to be responsible for a massive paradigm shift in the NA ecosystem, but if you had to give like people advice, or like how does that shift start to happen? Like, how do we get people to believe more in their own talent?
I think it starts with the fact that obviously LCS is best of ones. People aren't going to be willing to try out new players in best of ones when literally every game matters. Like, I think it's also like, I guess, I don't know. I really don't know what people are thinking. I feel like there's a lot of good talent in NA, especially for mid lane. Like, I think it's actually one of the more stacked roles right now, outside of like maybe top or AD carry. But people just need to be willing to give them a chance and see how they are when they first begin and see if they can be like, you know, molded into a better player or not. Like, I think a lot of mid laners in NA Academy are really good and are like deserve a chance, at least a chance. That's all you need to give them. Give them a chance, maybe for a split or even two. If they don't improve or see like, you don't see great improvement in them, you can give up on them if you want. But I still think it's at least worth giving a chance. I just wish people in NA or teams in NA would at least give a chance. That's like the bare minimum. They're not going to get better unless you give them the chance to.
Thank you so much for saying that. I totally agree. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, I feel like there's also this prevailing attitude that like LCS is like way up here and Academy is way down here. But from what I'm seeing from the gameplay, it's actually Academy teams like kind of interspersed with LCS teams, and then the Cloud9 LCS team kind of above everyone.
Yeah.
How close do you think the competition is between NA Academy and LCS overall?
Not as close as the public perception may think it is, but I definitely think it's kind of close. I think the main thing is what you see in Academy doesn't necessarily reflect what would happen in real LCS games. The players are better, the teams are better as a whole, and then in Academy they're slightly worse, and some of the players probably maybe individually good, but like if you put them into an LCS game versus an LCS team, majority of them, like the top teams at least, I think they wouldn't fare off very well. I think they would do okay, but I think you'll see like more of the glaring issues within their team or like their gameplay. And part of that is obviously going to be like, they need to experience that and see that for themselves, or else they're not going to improve it themselves, right? I think those players in Academy, those teams in Academy, they could be LCS level. They just need to be put against LCS level teams, right? They're just going to keep making more and more mistakes against each other, and it's never really going to improve.
So the full interview with Insanity is available at youtube.com/ESPN Esports. Emily, when you look at the Academy teams and how they've been performing, I'm in first place right now. TSM Academy, I should say, in first place, and some recent Academy transfers. What do you make of it all? What should we know about Academy this split?
I mean, I think the big thing is that I feel like and David said this in the interview as well, but I feel like the gap between Academy and LCS is, especially when you look at like player talent, is a lot narrower than people want to admit. But playing in the LCS gives like such a boost to your level of play just because of the structure and, you know, how you're playing actual LCS teams that have much better macro understanding. Even we had C9 and TSM Academy played each other, and it was still like, and these are the two like top Academy teams. I would actually estimate that they'd end up being like middling maybe LCS teams. Like, I think they could be pretty scrappy in that like free-for-all that's kind of the center of the NA standings. But even then you had like C9 going off of basically Fudge popping off on Camille. So I think it's a lot more of that. Like, it's a lot more of a showcase for these individual players. The problem is that these individual players aren't necessarily making it up into the LCS. Like, Insanity is the big debut that we've had this particular split. You already mentioned Tactical, who's finally getting like I'm really happy that he wasn't just kind of cast aside after only subbing for Doublelift like a few games, because that's sometimes what happens, right? Like Alarim has alluded to this as well. Like he's had his chances in LCS, but then he's always been, brought back. It's like, okay, you're going to sub here and then we're going to bring in someone else. So I'm really glad that someone like Tactical, for example, is getting like a full split to be like, okay, what can you do? Like we're going to invest time into you. And I think that's the big thing. The other big thing is that I looked at, of the 62 players in Academy right now, it depends on how you feel about Triple, because Triple has played in Osh, and it depends on how, like, whether you consider that like a starting spot, despite the fact it's in a minor region, because he played there for a while. But only, like, depending on how you feel about that, only 21 to 20 of those players have not played in the LCS. So it's a matter of, like, getting those up to LCS where they can get opportunities. And I think to that point, the difference in individual play isn't all that like large. So I would like to see teams giving some more of these academy players a chance. Like to Jacob's point, even if you just feel like you need a refresh, right? Like maybe bring in Treats if you're TSM, give him a shot. He's been on that team for a really long time.
100%. Yeah, I think, and 100 Thieves is a good example of this, right? Bringing up Contractz and Poom, like it's maybe even if you want to argue that they're not as good as Meteos or Stunt, which I don't know. I think Contractz is as good as Meteos, if not better. And I think that Poom, if he's not as good as Stunt already, he will be with it some time. But like having two new fresh faces in a team environment has done a lot for them, right? Like we've seen that already in the very small sample size we have. So for me, right, like I think using them as an example, there is certainly like a way to do this, and their system reminds me a lot of Cloud9's, which has built a lot of these players, right? Like if you look at Licorice and Blabber, they both came out of the Cloud9 developmental system. Licorice was a player that was on the like Cloud9 Challenger or whatever their name was at the time, and then ended up going to United and playing in the Challenger series, and then came back to Cloud9 to play LCS after Impact got a bigger contract from Team Liquid. So yeah, like and same with Blabber, he worked his way through that system. So and even Vulcan, right? Like Vulcan was a Clutch Academy player that worked his way up into the ranks of Clutch Gaming, and then got the Cloud9 contract after a good Worlds performance. So like there is certainly talent in the Academy system, and when you look at things like Europe as well, in the European regional leagues, like there's talent there too. I just think it's about, like we've talked about this at length, is why teams financially, it doesn't make as much sense to take risk on smaller talent, because winning gets you investors or winning gets you sponsors, and people haven't found their ways to make their brands interesting other than winning, which is a huge, bigger business issue. But yeah, like I think that there are players that if you took the chance on them in Academy, they could actually play out to be something really interesting.
So Tyler, I know that you've been beating this drum a very long time about how to fix NA cultivating talent. One thing I want to mention is when I spoke with Tactical, he basically said that if you look at the changes recently that have been made in the LCS, he welcomes all the changes. He loves the new talent that are getting opportunities, himself included. He's including himself in this conversation. But he also went so far as to say, perhaps this might be the start of the paradigm shifting. Maybe finally we will see the winds of change in terms of how Academy is looked at. Do you feel the same way? Do you agree with what he's saying?
I mean, the winds of change is called coronavirus, Arda, and I think we're gonna see a paradigm shift, but I don't think it's because teams have smartened up. I think it's going to be because we're going to go into this off season, and I think if you are unless you are like an EG, right, where I think, EG offered Chovy a multi-million-dollar deal. Chovy's on a one-year deal. If Chovy is open to, negotiations again, I'm sure, EG will go back to that table and see if they can bring Chovy over with Huni and Bang on the roster. But I think for most teams with the pandemic, taking away their funds, breaking them down, I think this year, instead of looking towards Europe or Korea where they go, ooh, boy, flashy name who's been playing in Korea for 6 years and is on their last legs, or let's bring this random European player over because, why not? They're a better region, so this player must be better. I think they'll be looking at the Academy rosters and looking at the Diamonds, the Evolves, and thinking, how can we get these players from these Academy rosters to plug them into our LCS team. Because I think like if you look at Dignitas, you know, with the Froggen, Phoenix, Carousel that's going on, if you plug in an Evolve there, or if you plug in a Palafox, and then you have a duo of like a Palafox or a Evolve alongside John Sun to kind of build around, like then you get excited, right? Like it's been, I mean, for how bad Dignitas has been for most of the split, like it's been fun to watch John Sun because he's, along with Afram, have been quite good. He's been one of the better bottom laners in the league, even on a terrible team. So I think we're still going to see a few teams, you know, go out and try to get that big fish during the off season. But I do think because of the coronavirus and because of the kind of situation we are in, we are going to see a lot more teams looking internally in NA and looking and say, hey, maybe our big pickup this off season is going to be Evolved or a Diamond. And sadly, like Evolved might be the most blue chip prospect we have right now in Academy, but he's never going to start on TSM because they have Mr. Bjergsen, who co-owns the team on the roster, who is in MVP shape. So I think for TSM going into the summer or going into the off season, you know, you spend a large amount to get double lift. Maybe you can get some of that back by selling off Evolve. And I think there's a few teams that Immortals, Dignitas should be looking at Evolve and being like, this should be our big pickup, because I think Evolve is a player you can build around. And I think for TSM, they need to get some money back after spending so much on double lift. So it's kind of sad he can't play on TSM because of the Bjergsen block, but I do think that they could probably make some good money from him by getting him to a team that desperately needs Evolved.
In honor of our Academy LCS conversation, we decided to bring back an old favorite segment of ours. We don't really have a running name for this segment. I guess the working title is The Buckets.
The Bucket.
But like, maybe we should just make a better name. Emily, you're the creative one of all of us.
No,
Can we think of a name?
I'm terrible at titling things. That's why my titles never make it to actual articles.
The Bucket Bowl.
Is that what we're calling this? La Bucket Bowl?
No, the Bucket Bowl. I didn't say La Bucket. I said Bucket Bowl. Bucket Bowl.
The Bucket Bowl. Okay, fine. All right, sure. Anyhow, I have two glasses here, or buckets. In here are names of, in here are names of Academy teams, and in here are names of LCS teams. I'm going to pick one from here and one from here at random, and then there are 3 teams in total in each. And we're going to go in order, Emily, Jacob, Tyler, and they are going to discuss this hypothetical matchup between the teams that are randomly chosen here. So This is how we will start.
Let's do it.
Team number 1, very, very scientific, by the way. It's almost like the lottery. Team number 1 is...
Fnatic.
Actually, the way Fnatic have been playing, that'd be a weird.
Dragon X.
C9 Academy.
Oh, okay. I was like, I cannot read that. That is too bright.
That says C9. Oh, yeah, I guess the light doesn't help. C9 Academy.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay.
And
C9
number
Academy.
2, C9 Academy is taking on, Emily, is going to battle
Top Esports.
Immortals.
So
your
are
matchup
we
is C9
talking...
Academy versus Immortals.
So basically, this is former Immortals Academy versus current C9 Academy, right? Yes?
Basically, yeah, I guess
because
so.
We're going with...
Are you... So, yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about the rules. Do you want to pick the current LCS iteration of Immortals, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we still have to. So
Okay.
It's basically C9 Academy versus the current IMT roster, which is formerly IMT Academy. I think C9 Academy, despite the fact that TSM Academy is top, I really like a lot of the things that C9 Academy have done. I think they have multiple players that they can play around. I think, like, I'm trying to remember whether they met when they were, when it was C9. Yeah, I'm going to look at the thing because, so C9 Academy beat IMT Academy previously I believe in the week that they swapped. So that would have been the week where they basically played like 4 games back to back. This with the same roster for going from Academy to LCS. I think at this point, interestingly enough, I would side with IMT, the current IMT roster, previously IMT Academy. Basically the Alarum, Xmithy, Insanity, Apollo Hakuko roster. I think this roster is actually two really close games away from having a pretty strong record in the LCS. And I think that they have even grown during their time in the LCS. So I think I would still, despite the fact that C9 Academy beat them, I would side with IMT Academy now. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that IMT, or I think that Immortals or whatever, the current Immortals roster that played this past weekend is improving, as I said earlier. I think that they're getting better. So I think that of the bottom teams in the LCS, they are one that is on the rise, not one that's falling or is just like stagnant as a terrible team. So yeah, I would put my chips on Immortals, but I think it would be a fairly competitive game. I don't think that they're fantastic, but I don't think that they're as bad as they were when they were playing in Academy together either.
I take C9 Academy. I think they're better. I think
Ooh.
C9 Academy. I think C9 Academy is the best Academy team. I think they got hamstrung because they had to change their roster during this play. If this is spring C9 Academy, I think they smash Immortals. I think the loss of King was a huge loss for C9 Academy. King looked like a player that could have gone up to the LCS alongside Diamond and been one of the better bot lanes in the league. Losing King due to him having to go back to Oceania was a really big miss. And Tomo has been admirable, and he actually has been quite good in his short stint on the team. But I do think the full C9 Academy roster, which is Fudge, Inori, Palafox, King, and Diamond, is a team that if you put them in the LCS, I think they finish top 6. I really love that roster. And I think the loss of King has really put Fudge, another Oceania player, kind of in the spotlight, where he is really popping off and looking like a super strong player that he might also, like him, Evolve, Diamond, Palafox. Like, these are the players that I think when we go to free agent frenzy in a few months, those are going to be some of the big names on the minds of everyone because, again, Fudge is not going to start over Licorice. Licorice is one of the best NA top laners of all time. He's still a young player. He's a big voice. Like, you're not replacing Licorice. He's just too damn good. So, but if you're a team like, Dignitas or, even Immortals, like, you look at Fudge and say, hey, maybe we want to go out and get this guy because he's young, he's improving at a rapid rate, and he's going to be a lot cheaper than going off to Korea to try to sign, a 7-year veteran top laner. So I really like C9 Academy, which is why I picked them over Immortal Academy, even with Tomo. But I do think if you brought back King, hopefully King can get back in NA and play for his team soon. That full roster would smash Immortals. I really do like C9 Academy at full strength.
They did beat them with Tomo, and it was through like solo laners, right? So I think if C9 Academy were to win, it would come from that top side. So basically Fudge, Inori, Palafox versus Alarum, Smithy, Insanity. I just think that honestly, like, Insanity's been playing pretty well, like better than I expected from him, to be honest, in LCS. And I think the rematch between those two top sides would be slightly IMT favored, although, like, basically my strategy if I'm C9 Academy is I'm getting Fudge on something like the Camille. I'm getting him on something where he can just split push and carry.
By the way, Tyler, someone that agrees with you is Licorice. I asked him how C9 Academy would do in the LCS, and he said they'd be middle of the pack. They could beat some of those bottom teams. So he agrees.
I mean, they have really good solo laners. I think Fudge and Palafox are both LCS-ready players. It's the terrible fact that usually the best Academy teams are run by the teams who are best in LCS. So you get situations where you've Evolved, who might be one of the best prospects we've had in NA in a very long time, who's never going to play on TSM because Bjergsen's in front of him. A very similar thing with Fudge, where Fudge is, if he was on Dignitas Academy, he'd be starting next week, but because he's on C9 Academy, he's behind Licorice, who's one of the better top laners, I believe, in the West. I will say West, not just North America. I think he's one of the best top laners in the West. In front of him, so he's never going to start, especially when he brings in the import player tag. So that's the kind of sad thing of Academy is mostly when you have good Academy teams, usually their main teams are also doing well because they're small organizations. Yep. And so,
Jacob, let's get to yours. Here is the Academy. We got this one right here. Let's see who we got for you. Jacob, you have Immortals Academy. So the other 5.
Oh no, he's gonna go in on the French.
Other 5.
Oh,
You got
no.
the other 5.
The winless side of
Oh
Immortals.
no, Jake is about to get banned from France.
And your opponent is okay, Dignitas.
Oh, easy. Okay, I could roast Immortals Academy all day, but I can roast Dignitas even harder. And Dignitas is we at least with Immortals Academy they spent some money. Dignitas is the bargain bin, as Tyler has said before. So like this team's awful. This is one of the worst teams we've seen in the LCS, and like I feel bad for saying that because some of the people on Dignitas are really nice, and I believe in Johnson also. But like, I don't know, man. This Dignitas team is sore. It makes my eye sore from watching. It's so bad, and at least with like the Immortals team, there's some semblance of life. Jesus, like I'm not a big fan of what's going on with Immortals Academy and when they were playing in the LCS, what happened there either. But good lord, like I don't want to watch another Dignitas game again. This is terrible. I think it's that simple. So yes, Immortals Academy over Dignitas.
Well, that was easy.
But I would still say Immortals Academy would be a garbage team in the LCS also. Like they would still be bottom of the pack, but they're better than Dignitas.
So we're going with the Dignitas that's basically the 2016 TL topside, and then Afro Johnson, right? Okay. Because Afro and Johnson have actually, I think, been playing really well. So for me, it would depend on if Dignitas can get their bot lane to carry them, despite the fact that I feel like watching Dignitas now, you see Dardoch go topside a lot more often. I mean, Soaz is pretty used to playing weak side top and getting attacked. So this is close. I don't know. Dignitas have won recently in LCS. I might have to side with them. This is a close one though. This would be a banger.
This is easy for me. If Immortals Academy bans Azir, then I will take Immortals Academy. If Dignitas gets Azir and Phoenix can play the one champion that he's proficient at a high level still, I will take Dignitas, because watching Phoenix on Twisted Fate is really painful. Watching Phoenix on Azir is like, wow, this guy's one of the best players in the entire league. So
it's been that way though.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that's wrong, but if he can get Azir, then I feel pretty confident in Dignitas. If not, I'll go for Immortals Academy, because his first TF game back in the league was one of the worst TF games I've ever seen, and that pains me to say. And I do like Phoenix, and he's a good Azir player, and he has some good picks. But man, that TF game was bad. So I'll go with Immortals Academy, because I think they would be smart enough to ban Azir and try to pinch out the mid lane and try to attack the weak top side and just kind of leave Johnson and Aftermon Island. So I'll go with Immortals Academy.
Okay, Tyler, let's see who you say here. Your academy team is TSM Academy.
All right.
Wait, let me just there. That's better. There you go, TSM Academy. And your normal team is Royal Youth. Go.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
Turkey's Royal Youth. So
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Your LCS team is actually Golden Guardians.
Ooh, okay. Huh. Man, it'd actually be a really fun matchup. I actually quite would like that. I think I give the edge to Golden Guardians just because I think Winston might be exposed by Closer, and I think Closer, when he can get a matchup that he can exploit, he is one of the most game-breaking players in the LCS, not just in jungler form, but he is, when he can get a little bit of an edge and he can exploit someone that he sees a bit weaker than him, he can just run away with a game. And we've seen this time and time again in his short stint in the LCS. But I do think TSM would have chances to win. I think Evolved can go straight up with DeMonte. I think it would be very interesting. I wonder if they would who would get the Zoe. I think both players are good on the champion. I wonder if they would try to take away the Zoe from Evolved, who has been very good on that champion in Academy. The bottom lane might be where I kind of might give the edge to TSM. FBI versus Lost, two old friends from the Oceania region. Oceania very strong in NA, not like Europe. We will talk about that very soon, where Oceania is kind of surging in NA. Oceania might be dead over in the LEC, but Lost and Treats are a good bot lane. And I'm not saying that FBI and Hui are not. I still think Hui has shown some slip-ups at times in the support role. I think his experience and veteran and all that kind of makes up for his deficiencies in other areas, but I do think Treats is, like Jacob said, a player that could be bumped up to LCS and not look out of place. In the end, I will go with Golden Guardians just because I do think that DeMonte knows how to play for closer. DeMonte is very much that selfless player who's like, I have a jungler who can carry hard, and I don't think Winston's a player at his current form, a rookie in Academy, who I do have good hope for. I do think he could be an LCS player in a year or two, but Closer is a monster when he gets ahead, and I think Closer would get ahead with the help of DeMonte. I don't think Evolve would be able to push DeMonte that hard, and I think that Golden Guardians would win in a pretty fun matchup. This is probably the closest matchup we've had, and not in like a bad way. The last matchup was pretty blah. I think both of these teams are pretty good.
This would be an interesting matchup. I think GGS, like, to put aside a lot of the individual matchups, I think Golden Guardians have actually shown a really interesting capacity to recognize their own win conditions. Whether they can execute it is a different story, but I think, like, for example, especially in some of their more recent games, you've seen them recognize when they need to slow the tempo down, when they need to speed up, and when they need to spread the map. And I think that's actually something that I haven't seen the same thing from TSM Academy in their games. So I think that would eventually put GGS over the top, provided that they draft for their own win conditions as well, which I think also has not necessarily been a problem with this team. If anything, the problem has been their ability to close out the game, because their early games are actually really, really good. Like, even in their losses, their early games are smart and really good. And part of that is Closer, yes, but part of that is just the entire team, I think, draft-wise, and also just recognizing their own win conditions, which I think, like, when we're talking about individual players versus individual players, these teams are a lot more even. But when we're talking about, like, how they actually play, I think GGS definitely has the edge.
Anything to add, Jacob?
No, I don't disagree with that at all. I still have some faith in Golden Guardians. My biggest question in this matchup, theoretically, would be the bottom lane. Right, like, I think that the bottom lane of TSM Academy is actually pretty good. On the back of Treats, too. Like, I'm a big believer in him, and I hope that he does get a shot one day, right? Like, he's a player who probably would have pretty good fortune in Europe if he wanted to be in Europe, right? He's chosen to be in North America with TSM for a number of years now. Yeah, so I'm a believer in the bottom lane of TSM Academy, and I think that would be the matchup to watch. But I think the other side of the map, to Tyler's point, like, I think that the top side of the map would be in favor of Golden Guardians overall.
So we're going to get to the LEC in just a second. Programming note for everybody. Please stick around at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have League of Legends Trivia Night every Tuesday following Rift Rewind. All of you are invited to join us to challenge our analysts to play along through a Twitch extension. So you have to be watching us on Twitch live in order to participate, but everyone is welcome and everybody is invited. If you're listening to us in podcast form, feel free to join us on Twitch next week. To tease Trivia Night, I have one very quick trivia question for you that is Academy related. There is only one team in LCS Academy that has not fielded a Canadian player this split. Which team is it?
This is one that I would just let run down and not answer.
Take a guess.
Take a guess. I'm gonna take a guess. I'm gonna be boring. FlyQuest. No, FlyQuest has
Turtle. Not FlyQuest.
I'm gonna go. Yeah. Wait. It's either not 100 Thieves. Okay. Oh yeah, it's Team L. It's Liquid. Steve team. Money men.
Team Liquid is correct. That is correct. Right. Jenkins, Greg, Yusui, Rikara, and Yama, all of them are American. There is no Canadians. Every other team is one.
And they're the worst team in Academy right now. So.
What does that say, Canada? What does that say? Love it. All right, let's move on to from North America to Europe now. Jacob, you broke the news that Jack Troll will be replacing Destiny on Origin. That article is up at espn.com/esports right now. What do you make of the move?
I'm confused. I'm not, so business Jacob Wolf is not confused. Analyst Jacob Wolf is very confused. And I will explain why. The analyst part of my brain is very confused because Destiny was not the issue altogether. Do I think he was great? No. Do I think that he was the problem? Also no. I think that Nuke Duck is awful right now. It looks really bad on Origin. I think that Xerxes needs to step it up because he's performing very poorly compared to how we have seen him perform in the past on teams like Splice. I don't think Destiny was the problem. And I don't think that Jack Troll is a good replacement. Now, business Jacob Wolf, the business side of my brain, knows a few things. One, Origin and the Astralis group at large are in a very tricky financial spot right now. They have cut down salaries. This has been reported by Richard Lewis and confirmed this myself. They've cut salaries in the midst of COVID. They, to a certain percentage, they are being pretty thrifty with their spending more generally. And they're also having to make some roster changes that have come with some buyouts in some instances in the case of Astralis. So monetarily, they are at a very rough position. Jack Troll didn't cost them a dime. And that is why it's particularly interesting because they didn't have to buy him out of Vitality. He was let go of Vitality because Vitality wanted him to play some games. They wanted to give him that opportunity. They don't want to use him on either of their rosters. His future at Vitality was basically non-existent. And so let him go, right? Like, we're in a weird market where everybody's not spending a bunch of money anyway. I know that there were I have heard there are other teams like Schalke that were interested in him before that were scared away by buyout, right? The fact that he had one. And I think that at this point, like, they don't really have any plans for him, so it makes sense, right? Like, he's free of charge and you can get him. Origin says they're adding him as a sixth member and that they did confirm he's playing this weekend versus G2. And in my opinion, like, he's probably going to be the permanent replacement for whatever reason, but he's not a very good player, or at least he hasn't been the past year. And so I'm not like all inspired by the Jack Troll move. I have very little faith in Origin performing as a team at this point. I'm very down on their ability to qualify for the World Championship at this point, as I have been for the past couple of weeks, even before it got progressively worse. And I'm sad because I actually do think Destiny was getting better. What better means? Subjective, right? But like, I think he had a pretty dismal spring compared. And look, like, he's also the first Oceanic player to ever play in Europe, so obviously there's super high expectation. But he had a pretty dismal spring. He's gotten a lot better in the summer by most panelist accounts, right? But still a lot better from being really bad to start off. Is again, that's a scale. But to me, like, he shouldn't have been replaced. They should have looked at Nuke Duck first, and I don't understand the Jack Troll move other than the money part of it.
Oh, Origin. It's
That's it. Origin, you know.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, this is not like a real surprise to anyone here. Like, we did our preview show for summer, our preview extravaganza. Every single one of us said Origin was going to be the biggest appointment in the entire field. Like, they were like, none of us were really bullish on Origin. And I think this is kind of why, like, we saw, you know, Astralis kind of breaking at the seams, the overall Origin Astralis group. And Nuke Duck has not been playing very well, or as Jacob would say, he is bad. So the team is Afari, who's amazing, and I think it's really, really sad that Afari is having kind of his breakthrough season where he's becoming a superstar player, like a legitimate, like, top 5 player in Europe, like the best, I would say, best top laner in Europe, on a team that is kind of unraveling at the seams. And I think another reason why they picked up Jack Troll is because I'm going to guess that Upset, who's been doing with him a lot, even in the last month or so, on stream and just in solo queue, or, you know, in duo queue, is he's wanted to play with Jack Troll. And Upset is one of those probably players was paid the most during the offseason, I would have to believe, because almost every team around the world wanted him. Various NA teams wanted Upset, and he went to Origin, so they probably paid a big bounty for him. So when it comes down to it, it was probably a Destiny saying, I feel more comfortable playing with Jack Troll, and they picked up Jack Troll to appease Upset. Which, he is one of their star players. Him and Afari are kind of dragging the team as it goes. It just really sucks because I think Upset or Afari on a more established team could be, world champions. Like if you put Afari on Fnatic right now with Bwipo kind of going downhill and not looking like his usual self as he was.
A whole other can of worms there.
Another can of worms, where if you put Afari on Fnatic,
another internal can of worms. Yeah.
Maybe that team could go to a world championship. Or if you put Upset in the right situation, he could be that star carry that brings a team to a championship. But right now, it's just kind of a really sad situation where it's not fun to watch Origin. Like it's not a fun train wreck to watch. Like no. TSM, people love watching TSM draw. We can talk trash all day about TSM. Jacob can go on how bad they are, but people are always going to be interested in TSM. It's fun to watch TSM win or lose. They're just a very exciting brand. It's exciting to watch the train wreck happen or to see them exceed. Origin, it's like watching them succeed is boring. Watching them fail is boring. It's just kind of a really boring train wreck that we know the outcome of, and we're just kind of watching them unravel as probably the offseason will come around and Upset of Afari will leave, and the team is going to go back to when they were that team. When you remember when the meme team when they did that graphic team, team practice, heart, in with the MS Paint, they're going back to those days. We're going back to those days. So it's just sad. It's not fun. It's not fun to talk about Origin. TSM and Origin have similarities between the two. They both bet big and both are kind of seeing resistance. But where TSM is fun to theorize about, just talking about Origin is just depressing, and it's a slow, painful train wreck. And watching Afari, who's so good, and should be on a championship team, just wasting away his breakout season is just it's really sad.
So Tyler,
I'll say if this ends up working out, it'll be and again, I don't have high hopes, so I won't add to any of the complaints. But I think if this does work out, it will be because to the previous point, Upset and Jack Troll end up working out really well together. And there are more than a few champions in this current meta that are kind of more engaged champions that Jack Troll is known for, particularly the Thresh. But I think that if this ends up working, and the only other thing I can think of is that if Jack Troll and Upset get along super well, and they can contest 2v2 on their own to get advantages, right? That could actually be really huge for this team. If they can get 2v2 either laning advantages or 2v2 bot side kills on their own to take control of bot side, which could lead to better river and dragon control for the rest of the team, especially if Alfari continues to kind of stomp in top lane. I think that could be really good for the team. So that's if it works out, that I think is the path to it working out. I just wanted to add that.
So to summarize what Tyler said there in a word, Borigin.
Yeah. Not even that's the thing though, that sums up Origin pretty well. It's not even a good pun. It's not an original pun, but it's a one that works. And for the slow, painful... Oh,
it's not original? I thought it was being original. Oh, wow.
For the slow, painful dissolvation of Origin, it kind of fits. And I hope Afari finds a team.
I was holding on to that as Emily was talking. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna make them laugh so hard. This is gonna be hilarious. And then all of you just completely deadpanned. It's
gonna get those lol dubs right now. But
nope, no lol dubs at all.
No, but Alfari, find a home, Alfari. Go find some.
That home,
please.
That home will not be G2 because G2 just signed not only their League of Legends rosters. Actually, they signed a triple threat. They re-signed all of their League of Legends, Rocket League, and Siege rosters. They basically shored up everybody, and in G2 in particular, actually all three of them, pardon me, until 2022. So they're running it back in 3 different esports, but let's focus on League of Legends in particular. Jacob, they've had success. They didn't find what they wanted in Worlds last year, but they have enough confidence here to run it back. How much of, let me start with this. We talked about how NA might be looking at their academy teams a little bit more now because of coronavirus and what's happening with the pandemic. How much of this decision do you think had to do with that as well?
I think it was part of it because, and I know Emily mentioned this earlier on a pre-production call today, that like it's like a lot of teams feel like this may be a wash this year, right? Like just because we reported what Riot would like to do and are talking about doing for the World Championship does not mean that there isn't a world where it gets canceled, right? Like it's still possible. There is like so many different factors, probably the biggest among them being the Chinese government just saying, F you, we're not going to let any Americans in fear of COVID coming back into the country. Like we're not going to let any Americans come into the country or any foreigners come into the country, right? No visas for you. Like that's totally possible, right? Like, and that would really like Worlds has to be over at that point. You know, if there's like, if they limit who comes in and out of the country. We know that obviously there's been a lot of discussion about sporting events being canceled for the remainder of the year in China. And also the fact that even though esports is not necessarily counted in that same bubble, there's still the chance. So that said, like, I think coronavirus has part of it, but I also just want to mention, like, we've had it for a year and a half now, so maybe people don't remember. But I think the Caps roster change, Caps moving from Fnatic to G2, maybe the most consequential European League of Legends move of all time. Like, him and Perks were at the top of their game, 1 and 2 respectively, and in the mid lane when that move happened. And by proxy of Caps talking to management and talking to Perks and talking to the other players on G2, they were willing to do what they have done, which was move Perks to bot lane and let Caps come over and sort of try to build this super team, right? And that, like, the difference between Perks, Caps, and the rest of the LEC in terms of mid lane is actually pretty wide, right? Like, those guys are really good, really, really good mid laners. And there are upcoming talent that will close that gap, I'm sure. But the fact that, like, you can just pin it down and make it even worse, so, like, Caps or Perks don't, and I think Perks is a G2 for life player anyway, but, like, the fact that you can't, like, Caps is not going to be in a position where another team comes and offers him giant loads of money to come join, right? Like, the fact that that's even a non-starter is great. Like, that is security for G2, and I don't see any player on this team getting progressively worse. You know, the oldest player on this team is Jankos in terms of playing for a long time, and like even he is still having fantastic career highlight moments of his own. So yeah, for me, like this is great, and it was unsurprising to me, and it makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, I love this G2 lineup. Also, yeah, I do think that a lot of teams are kind of looking at this year as a wash. And another thing that happened with G2 is a bunch of stuff out of their control with Adef and Perks' family, right? So he had to take some time off, and he'll be coming back this coming week. And I don't know, I love this team. I'm so glad that they're staying together because I just really love watching them play together. So I'm glad we'll be able to see that for another year, especially since this year is pretty like it's just pretty rough, right? Pretty much no LAN events since the beginning of the year. Worlds is up in the air, which we're about to talk about. So yeah, I'm just happy that I get to see these 5 players continue to play together.
I agree. It's exciting to see one of the best Western teams, if not, no, they are the best Western team of all time. They've shown it time and time again. But in the back of my mind, I do kind of hope, maybe not, next year, but I do kind of hope that Caps just leaves. I want to see Caps just, I want Caps Perks rivalry, right? It's Messi and Ronaldo. You don't want to see Messi and Ronaldo. You don't want to see LeBron and Durant on the same team. You want to see them playing against each other. Like, they are the 2 best mid laners in Europe. They are the 2 best mid laners in Europe's history.
Let's clarify. If LeBron and KD are on my team, I'm okay with it. I just want to be clear on that.
But as an analyst, as a fan who's watching these games, the Perks Caps rivalry, these 2 players, these 2 big personalities teaming up, the mega powers, as you will, it's exciting, and they're friends and they get along great. And Perks is, I would probably say, one of, if not the best captain in League of Legends, by just reining in all these personalities to make this kind of perfect team where they can lose games, laugh it off, and they just get along so well. But in the back of my mind, how sweet would it be if Jacob breaks the news of Caps is leaving G2. He's done with the team.
I remember exactly where I was when I broke the news that Caps was joining G2. Yeah. I was at a Mexican restaurant in Kingsville, Texas, eating breakfast tacos after dropping my girlfriend off at college. That was I will distinctly remember writing that story on my phone just because of the sort of impact it had for the rest of this industry.
I want to see Caps versus Perks. I know they're great together. Okay. I know they might create the best, they might win a world championship together. I think that it was what Carlos wants, what both of them want to do, and they think they can do it together. But I want to see them play against each other because you want to see the best play the best. And regardless of Perks being one of the best AD carries in the world, he's also one of the best mid laners in the world. And I want to see that Perks Caps matchup one more time. Maybe not in 2021, maybe not even 2022, but I do hope that one day after they win their world championship together, they can split off one more time and we can see that classic match between those two because I really do think that Perks back in the mid lane for at least 1 year going against Caps is really exciting because those two could go down as the greatest Western players in League of Legends history. They might get, statues together whenever Riot builds the League of Legends Hall of Fame, they'll be right next to each other in their statues. But I do want to see those two clash one more time. And it's not going to be 2020, it's not going to be 2021, but I do hope maybe one day we will see them clash once again because they're great teammates, maybe even the best teammates, but their rivalry and those two going off is always a fun one. So maybe one day.
G2 locked up till 2022. Cloud9 players locked up till November 2022. Both teams very likely have a path to Worlds this year. And that Worlds might be in a bubble. That's at least what we are hearing. That Worlds this year might very well take the NBA and NHL model and shore up, possibly in Shanghai, possibly somewhere else. Let's end on this because we only have a few minutes left on the show. What do you hope you see from, let's not analyze Worlds, it's too early for that. Let's not dissect Worlds from an analytical standpoint because we've done that. You can look that up at youtube.com/ESPN Esports. Something that you hope happens out of Worlds. Think of it this way. There's a great Twitter account called NBA Bubble Life that has basically all the content that is coming out of the NBA bubble, whether it's Miles Leonard shotgunning a beer or Dwight Howard showing up to that poolside club and he's the only one there, things like that. What do you hope you see? And by the way, actually, speaking of Twitter, we are now the proud owners of @Worlds Bubble. We are ready.
Wow.
We haven't populated it. We just own the username. That's it. So be ready for @Worlds Bubble to blow up in a couple months when we start aggregating all the content from all these teams. But what do you hope you see from the bubble? What kind of content are you hoping that we see? Tyler, start with you from the hypothetical potential Worlds bubble.
I tweeted about today, and Jack's already brought in, Hussein from Misfits have already talked about it. I want the snitch hotline. One of the coolest features of the NBA bubble is that there is a anonymous tip hotline where players can call in to the hotline if they see another player breaking quarantine rules or if they try to leave the quarantine bubble to go out to a bar or something else or hang out with someone. I want the snitch hotline in Shanghai, Arda. How great would it be if you have teams snitching on each other? Blabber tries to go out to get Burger King. Some of the teams try to go out for karaoke. It's the best chance NA has at Worlds, Arda. Just think about if NA could somehow get a Chinese or Korean team eliminated from Worlds by, getting them on the snitch hotline. How great would that be? That's the 24/7 strategic game that NA is going to have to need if they want to win the Worlds this year. They're going to have to snitch on everyone, baby.
Can you imagine our video? It's like we here at ESPN Esports have to report on the fact that IG can no longer participate in Worlds because Niski called the
LMAO. I think the big thing I kind of want to bring up though is that if it's a Shanghai bubble, it's not like they'll be trapped in a hotel past the initial 14-day quarantine. It's not sure, you won't be able to go out to a club and party or whatever, but you should be able to move around and at least go out to dinner in small groups. And to that note, I just want to say that I think pro gamers are a little bit more boring than NBA players. And they also, if it's in Shanghai, they'd be less trapped. I think what I would want to see, as dumb as this sounds, and everyone's going to be like, wow, Emily, you're boring AF, but I would love to see like different developing friendships between a whole bunch of players. Like one of the coolest things I think that always happens at Worlds is that you see a lot of these top players, especially those from the like NA and Europe and then South Korea and China, actually be able to interact and play with each other and hang out and get to know each other better in an environment where they wouldn't otherwise be able to do so, or they wouldn't otherwise be able to play on the same ladder and stuff like that. And I think a lot of really cool friendships come out of that. And I always really like seeing that. So that's the boring, like everyone else is looking for like the snitch hotline, someone get caught going to a club. Yeah. I'm just like, I want to see like player friendships. I think that's always really cool to see at Worlds.
Yeah, I think the like going past a certain number of feet would be interesting, but I, like Emily said, I don't think that those restrictions are going to be as like, if it does work out, are going to be as strong as they are elsewhere. And also, like, let's just point out part of the reason this is happening in the NBA bubble right now is the fact that like most of these guys are millionaires or multimillionaires and live in mansions, right? Like, and have like loads of space to themselves, and now they're confined to like, at best, a king suite at one of the Disney hotels, right? Like that's
a 5-star
big
hotel.
deal. Who cares?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
whatever.
Like that's a huge change of life when you
Still,
own a
though,
12-bedroom
whatever.
house or something, right? Like a 12-bedroom house in Dallas or whatever else you may be if you're a Mavericks player, right? Like for me, like I'm excited to sort of see what that looks like. I'm excited to see what content teams do with it, though, right? And also, like, what amount of people for content and for media are actually going to be allowed in the bubble, right? And / can afford to go into the bubble, because I think that a lot of media companies have scaled back in the wake of COVID-19 also. So, yeah, like, I'm interested to sort of see what could happen here from a content perspective, because, like, there's only so much you can do in a hotel until things get really dry. So I'm kind of like curious how teams get creative.
To be fair, there are a couple of players that have actually upped their YouTube game, like Matisse Teboul from the Phoenix Suns.
So good.
Has been like, yeah, he's created his own YouTube channel and bought equipment. Like he's bought a DSLR camera, and he's actually like become a YouTuber.
Content. It's not,
no, but still, like he's actually he's becoming a YouTuber while playing in this bubble. I think that's a great idea.
But that's different than if he is the Phoenix Suns, the team.
Sure. I get what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. And different if you're like Cloud9 or G2 Esports, trying to put like high-level production quality content out too.
Right. Emily, you were saying?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I think the other thing to point out is that whenever players are at like Korean boot camps and stuff, like I did a whole bunch of stops at Korean boot camps once doing like content with teams and writing features. And they all were like when we took them outside to film a feature, they'd be like, wow, this is the first time I've left my hotel since I got to Korea. And I'm like, okay, I think this is to Jacob's point. I think this is going to be a lot easier for League of Legends players than it is going to be for NBA players. That's the bottom line for me.
It's going to be like,
here's the last point. Last point here.
John Needham gets everyone in a room with all the interpreters for all the different languages, and they go, guys, we need you to do something really difficult. Stay in this hotel. And every gamer just nods.
Like
and every gamer's like, yeah, no problem. I'll just play video games all day. That's no problem. Emily, last point.
Awesome.
Last point here. You were laughing at me about saying IG. Fusilero12 in the chat says, the Shy getting snitched on for overextending past the quarantine bubble, costing IG Worlds would be on brand.
If there was odds on who would break the quarantine, I think like Rookie and the Shy are up there. Like it's like I would if the bubble was real, we're gonna have to make some actual odds to see who could break the 48,
although in fairness,
quarantine.
If they can just be at their team houses in Shanghai, that they've already passed quarantine.
Yeah.
Well,
that's true.
Top anime betrayals. The Shy extends past quarantine, costs IG Worlds, and then signs with T1. There you go.
So anyway, feel free to follow us on Twitter at Worlds Bubble. That'll blow up very, very soon. Stick around, by the way, if you're watching us on Twitch. League of Legends Trivia Night is next. We will take a couple minutes to tear down. We will come back in a few minutes, so don't worry. You can stay right where you are, and then you can join us in trivia. Play against Emily, Jacob, and Tyler. If you're listening to us in podcast form, feel free to join us next week. We do this every single Tuesday after Rift Rewind live. And if you're watching us on the ESPN app, on Twitter, or on YouTube, head on over to Twitch and join us. But in the meantime and in between time, that's it for us here on the Rift Rewind. We'll see you for trivia or next week.
Free.